Go ahead, David.
Welcome to David and Morris Chats. Today we are honored to have a longtime Boutwell resident who's going to take us down memory lane and share with us her experiences in her life.
Bye-bye, Morris. Keep going.
Morris is a good listener and he is non-judgmental. As mentioned, we are honored to chat with Marcy Lenz, who shares important aspects of her life that has inspired many others. Morris, do you have anything to say? He doesn't. So, Marcy, chat with us about your background. Where are you from? When were you born? Where are you from? Your family? You're from Dutchtown, aren't you?
I'm from the North Hill, a half a block from the golf course. I was born and raised a half a block from the golf course. I am an original Stillwater resident.
How about some early memories of growing up? I know you talked about the golf course when it was snowing.
It was a long ways from the golf course to the senior high school. We walked it every day, from the North Hill to the South Hill. No bus, no cars, just our feet. That's what made us strong.
Now, I recall you as saying that your dad served in World War I and was gassed, and that affected his health,
Yes,
particularly since he worked in a foundry in St. Paul. Is that right?
that is correct. That's correct.
And do you have any early memories of you growing up? I know that you like strudel.
With what we're all going through right now, I went through the Depression. I was a young girl, but I do remember it. We were all very, very poor, but we always had something to eat, and we were always nice and clean. I remember that so vividly. So hang in there, everybody. It's going to get better.
Marcy, I also heard you mention the WPA. In what context do you remember the WPA?
I just remember it was an awful time and not many people had jobs. And the WPA came on the scene and they helped build the St. Croix Bridge. And my daddy helped there a little bit too. So,
And of course, the WPA stands for Work Progress Administration, although the critics said the WPA stands for We Piddle Around.
oh, they were wrong, the critics were
It
wrong.
was a good program of
It was a good
the New
program.
Deal. When did you graduate, Marcy, and what motivated you to look for a job?
I graduated in 1943, June of 1943. I was 17 years old.
Stillwater High School?
Stillwater High School, Stillwater Senior High School. There were very, very few jobs in Stillwater. I wasn't ready to settle down to a marriage or anything. I wanted a job. And I saw a little article in the St. Paul Pioneer Press saying that the FBI in Washington, D.C. was looking for employees. So my mom and dad took me over to the Minneapolis field office. I was interviewed and I was accepted right then and there. A week later, after I graduated, I was on a train in St. Paul headed for Washington, D.C.
Wow.
I started out there, I was scared. Yes, I was scared. But I had a motivation. There was a gentleman who was visiting my dad in the backyard one day before I left home, and I heard him say to my dad, I give her 6 weeks. That motivated me to stay forever. I was so homesick at times and lonesome and everything, and I said, no way, that man is not gonna win. I'm gonna stay.
And Marcy, your dad contributed $100 to your trip.
Yes, he went down to Cosmopolitan Bank and drew out $100 for my trip, yes. I had one suitcase. I was scared, but when I got there, they had what they called girls that helped you find a place to live and things like that. So they were very helpful. And I started out as a little file clerk, then I moved up to clerk typist, then I moved up to proofreader, then I moved up to unit supervisor, and when I left, I was in charge of a section.
Wow.
So I am still involved with the FBI. It'll never leave me. Quarterly, I get the magazine from the FBI. It was my life. My husband and the FBI were my life.
When you were in school at Stillwater High School, did that prepare you in any way for the job you had at the FBI?
I would say yes, it really did. We worked hard. I could have probably had better grades if I would have had a nice place at home to study, you know. I had to share what we had with my brother and 2 sisters. But I worked hard. I worked hard in school, and I worked extra hard when I went to the FBI. And to this day, nobody really knows what I did, because we were told, you know, keep it to yourselves, and I never really told even my mom and dad what I really did. But I think I would have liked to gone back one more time, because I think whatever we did is now on automation.
Did your teachers have an expectation that you would either get married or take a menial job of some kind, that you weren't college material? Did you ever get that feeling?
I never did get that feeling, because I had one teacher. She was an English teacher, and I loved her and loved her to this day. She's long gone. But she was so strong and so good that I did everything she expected of me. And when I used to come home to visit my mom and dad, I always went to see her.
So you started off as a file clerk. What were the conditions of advancement? What did you have to do to
You
be
had to work
promoted?
doggone hard. You had to work hard to move up to each level. You had to work hard. I have with me a portfolio of all my letters of commendations, my promotions, and letters from the director, J. Edgar Hoover, and I say them all these years because I was so proud. I was proud I was from Stillwater, a little kid from Stillwater.
Did good.
Did good.
Did good.
Did you also take shorthand?
I did take shorthand, but you know what, Dave? I wasn't good at it. I was a great typist, but I wasn't too good a shorthand person. I made up my own shorthand. That was my problem.
Oh, that's cute.
Morris, do you have a question? I guess not, he's just listening. Okay, good, let's go on.
Checking in on Morris.
When you got to the FBI office in Washington, D.C., how did you deal with your loneliness and your homesickness?
Like I told you, I heard that gentleman say to my dad, I'd give her 6 weeks, and that did it. Every time I got homesick or lonely, I'd think, no, you're not going to win. I am hanging in here.
Did you ever go back home anytime you went?
I tried to get home at least once a year.
Or went?
Mm-hmm.
And you went by train?
By train, yes. Mm-hmm. During the war and all.
Wow.
Now, you were working for the FBI during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any special requirements on you? Like, did you have a top secret rating, or can you describe the atmosphere within the FBI as regards the war effort going on?
Washington DC at that time was full of military men. It was all military. They were coming and going in and out. And I never got involved in any of that. I guess I was a kind of good girl, you know?
Now, you mentioned military men. This leads me to my next question, which is, tell us how you happened to meet your husband.
That was interesting, and it interests everybody. Across from our building where I worked was the Eastern High School. And a lot of times at 3:30, a lot of the employees would come over and do part-time work. And this one day, this girl come up to me and she said, "Marcy, have you ever been to a professional baseball game?" And I said, "I've never been to anything professional. I'm just a little kid from Stillwater." She said, "Would you like to go?" And I said, "Sure." She said, "Would you like to meet my brother?" I said, "I'd love to meet your brother." So that is how I met Bob, and he was then working for the Department of the Navy. And he was in the Navy. And that's how we got to meet, and a couple of years later we married.
Now, you got married in St. Mike's Church, is that
I
right?
did.
Describe the weather when this happened.
It was June 1st, and believe it or not, it snowed on us. June 1st, it snowed. I can remember coming down the steps from St. Michael's Church, and it was snowing. But you know what? We didn't care.
I bet.
And how long were you married?
Over 50 years. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
And you didn't live in Washington DC all the time, you lived in Baltimore sometimes.
We lived in the Maryland area, the biggest part of the time, which is right outside of Washington, D.C.
So it wasn't in Baltimore.
No, Louisdale, Maryland.
Now, was there anything that happened during World War II that sticks out in your mind, and any contribution that the FBI made to the war effort that you remember? I know that you used to work with fingerprints,
Yes,
and that was top secret.
and that was, yes, and the fingerprints, of course, were a lot of military, anybody joining the military and all. And, but up above that, I'd like to tell you a cute little story about Mr. Hoover and Mr. Tolson was Mr. Hoover's assistant. One day I had to go to the Justice Department. There was different buildings that we worked in. I had to go over there for an interview of some kind, and I got on an elevator, and there was Director Hoover and Mr. Tolson. And I should have gotten off like on the 4th or 5th floor. I was so scared that I drove all the way up to the top of the building. And I'll never forget that, because as I come back down to get off on about the 4th floor, I thought, I bet those two men are laughing their heads off. I was so scared.
Share with us the photo you have of you and shaking hands with J. Edgar Hoover.
This was on my 25th anniversary, and I was called over, and Bob was with me, and to get my 25th key. I have 3 keys, 10, 20, and 25. I missed my 30th by 2 months because I was stricken with cancer, and I had to resign. And
What year was that?
that was heartbreaking, 1972.
Oh my gosh.
That was heartbreaking, because I was looking forward to my 30th, but I had to leave.
And Marcy, you were in a position to not interact but view the presidents that followed Franklin Roosevelt. Can you tell us about that?
I believe Bob and I went to all of their funerals, as I can remember, and they used to have parades coming down 16th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue and all. We used to be let out to go watch the parades. That was interesting. And when John F. Kennedy died, that was just devastating. We did go and viewed the casket and all at the Capitol, and heartbreaking.
I can't imagine.
Yep.
And you remembered Harry Truman, Harry S. Truman.
Oh, they're talking about him now because one of the gentlemen on the news has written a book about him. And I remember after the war, Bob and I going down Pennsylvania Avenue and just parking wherever we could park and headed for the White House. And we were outside by the railing, and here comes this little gentleman out, Harry Truman, greeting us all. That was really fascinating. And now he's being praised for the good work he did.
Well, I don't want to infringe on your time and your interaction with Truman, but I once, about a time, saw him. I didn't meet him. I was in graduate school at the University of Missouri, and this other guy and I went to his library in Independence. Now, he lived not too far from there, and he used to walk from his house to the library. But he got so unbalanced that he was falling into the roses along the road, the path, and so they used to drive him there. But he was there, and they were taping him for some reason or the other, so I saw him too. He was a little guy.
Yes. You couldn't help but like him. He was so plain. He was just like us, And he did a good job.
Yes, he did. Now, Marcy, since you're one of the residents here at Boutwell's that has seniority, so to speak, what year did you come here? Do you remember?
I've been here 19 years.
19 years. Now, I know you've been very active in support of the veterans, and also you have been responsible for the American flag being flown here in this complex.
Yes.
Can you describe the various activities that you were involved in?
I'm very patriotic because I had 8 members of my family have served in the military. Fortunately, they've all come home and they're all doing okay. And one day I came up to the building here and I looked up at the flags and I thought, gee, I wonder if I could donate a flag. So I've been donating flags for a great number of years. And it's my patriotism. I just can't say enough about the military.
Do you remember the first time that there was a ceremony with the flag and a lot of residents were here?
Yeah, that was wonderful.
What year was that, do you remember?
I wish I could remember that. I just saw an article on that in my desk the other day. My brother was alive and his son David, and they kind of put on the show for us. It was beautiful. I thought it was beautiful, and there was 100 of the residents sitting out front, which was watching the ceremony and all. And I wish we could do that every year.
Yes, that would have been.
But a lot of the veterans have passed on now and all,
Morris, do you have a question? No, he's listening, but he's non-judgmental. He has no questions.
No questions.
Well, I want to conclude this discussion and chat with you and thank you for the wonderful work that you've done here at Boutwell's. When you talk to younger people, given your 95 years, you have a birthday coming up
Yeah,
on December 23rd.
that's correct.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Marcy.
Oh,
Happy birthday to you.
how nice of you. Thank you so much.
But my question is, the youngsters that you interact with, what values do you try to emphasize that's going to get them success in life that helped you in your journey?
Maybe I'm old-fashioned or something, but I always try to tell them to help others. If you see somebody that's sad and lonely try to make them smile. You'll be rewarded 100 times over. I like to help people. And that's why I missed all my Boutwell friends the last couple of months. And I wish them all the best of health. And let's hope that next year is going to be a great year.
You know, one thing that stands out in the things that we've chatted about is the comment that your neighbor made about, oh, she's only gonna last 6 weeks, that motivated you to stay. You're determined.
I told the neighbor just recently, it was a gentleman, we were kidding about something, and I told him I'm ready to go. I've had a good life and I'm ready to go. He says, you're too feisty, Marcy, you're too feisty.
I would agree.
Marcy, thank you very much. We're
Thank
honored.
you, thank you, both,
Thank you. Thank you both.
So what'd you think?